the man, the myth, the legend,
Juice.
O.J. Simpson, Mr. Hey, Twitter world. And then this is his first interview since he's got out of prison. And then they took this interview, and basically the one condition was you can't ask who did it. You can't ask.
And I feel like the entire episode they did.
They did.
The whole time it was talking like, does it make you mad if you don't know the killer of Nicole Brown? And it's like OJ's like, come on, dude.
No, and then I was scared because OJ was like, we're not gonna talk about this. And that happened twice where OJ got really serious and he was like, we're not talking about this. And then you just saw them go, all good, bro. All good. It's like Steiny was there. He looked terrified. Kyle looked like a little bit uncomfortable, but he was saying after the interview that he was just kind of uncomfortable the whole interview because he was basically like where I am to you with OJ. It's like if OJ was sitting like right across at the end of the table, right next to OJ Simpson. But honestly, he dropped a lot of names in this interview. To start, he was in Donald Trump's wedding, which I didn't know. And then he was talking about how he saw Donald Trump hit a hole-in-one on the golf course. So he's talking about golfing with Donald Trump. And then he's talking about his relationship with Bob Kardashian. And then he drops the Kennedys, of all people. And then he was talking about his jail time. So that's kind of where the podcast starts. So what were your first reactions to OJ talking about being in jail? And do you think he was a kingpin?
Well, I can talk about the podcast for a second. We were watching the Sunday night football game.
Yeah.
And then somebody alerts me that the Nelk Boys have OJ Simpson on.
Yeah, I did.
And I'm like, fuck this game. I'm going to go watch OJ Simpson on the Nelk Boys. Because I am one of those people when it comes to OJ Simpson. I'm going to try to use my words carefully here.
Okay.
OJ Simpson, everybody talks about, the murder of Nicole Brown and that trial known around the world. The biggest trial, arguably, in American history. Mm-hmm. But if you look at OJ Simpson outside of that big glaring thing,
yeah, the murder.
He's one of the greatest running backs in the history of the NFL. He leaves, he joins the media. He's actually on Monday Night Football in the early 80s. He's in movies. He was actually originally supposed to be the Terminator before Arnold Schwarzenegger. But overall, I am one of those people. I think OJ Simpson is a charming man. He's a warm personality, and I really do enjoy his Twitter.
Yeah, me too.
So you talked about, he talked a lot about his prison time, and I don't know if necessarily he was the kingpin, but I don't think anybody fucked with him because not only did he have that trial heard around the world, but also he's a former NFL player. No. Former NFL icon.
Yeah.
For the Bills.
No, he was the man.
So why would they fuck with him? And plus he's got money too.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, it'd be like if Derrick Henry went to jail and got falsely. It's like he didn't even go to jail for like the murder trial. He went to jail for taking back his own property. So the trial, he was talking about how he felt like he got a raw deal with that, just because he felt like it was kind of a makeup sentence because they didn't get him for the murder charge. So then they got him on this kind of BS. He took back his Heisman Trophy and some family albums, and even the people who own the house where he robbed took back his own stuff. Even they said OJ Simpson didn't do anything wrong and they didn't want to press charges, but they went ahead and clapped him, put him in jail. And then he was talking about he was coaching the softball team in the championship. So it's like made some memories in jail there. And then he was basically like, he never got in any fights. No one ever messed with him. And then he said he had a lot of dudes where there was one point where he was in a shouting match and then a bunch of people started running over like to help him. So he had to wave them off. So it's like he was running the show in jail, which was kind of cool to see that he was a G and that people knew he got a raw deal. Then we move over to like the celebrities he's talking about. He was like, yeah, I love the Kardashian girls. I felt like Bob Kardashian raised great Christian women. And I was like, sorry, what now? The people who got famous for posing naked?
Oh, yeah, like Kim Kardashian's famous, Ray J video.
Yeah.
Um,
Wholesome family content.
no, I enjoyed hearing about him and Trump during their bachelor days. That was the thing that was really interesting to me. Like being in New York with them and them tearing up the city. Two young, rich, affluent men with a lot of power. I was like, seeing how they operate, talking about the 80s with cocaine and all that shit.
Yeah.
Super interesting podcast. Highly recommend listening to it. But for me with this, I think it opens up a dialogue with OJ Simpson in the public eye.
Yeah.
Because OJ Simpson, realistically, for the first 30 years of his, him being famous, he had being the best running back in football. He's the only running back in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards in a 14-game season.
Mm-hmm.
Unheard of. He rushed for 150 yards a game. Granted, it's a different era, you can argue, but still, 150 yards a game is 150 yards a game.
I would say it's more impressive because it's a different era, but it's a lot more physical. I get you running the ball more, but like at the end of the day, you have more leeway to hit you in the head, hit you below the knees. There's more risk for injury. So it's like, honestly, it's more impressive that he could run for 2,000 yards.
If he had a full 17-game season, he would have rushed for 2,500 yards.
Jesus.
So he had his era with the Bills, one of the best running backs in football. And then, like I mentioned, was on Monday Night Football, was in a bunch of movies. And then, really, this case comes out of they had this cop chase, and it was like he's accused of the arrest of, the murder of Nicole Brown. That whole case happens. And since then, it's been black for OJ Simpson. There's been nothing going on for him other than his Twitter that he recently, after he left prison and made that account. So I think personally, this podcast will prove to people why he was famous before this trial.
Yeah.
And I think opening up the door for him to return to public life in a way.
Yeah, and it showed why this podcast for me, OJ's just someone who's easy to watch, and he has the skill of being able to say nothing. And it's sounding like he's saying a lot. Like they would just ask him like a question, like the Nelk boys are typically like, so any cool parties? Like that's kind of their stick. Like Kyle, Steiny, both of them. I felt like this podcast would have been a lot better if Brad was there. Brad's kind of the really good interview. He kind of held down the last Andrew Tate interview they did, and then he asked some really good, insightful questions just about personal development and growth. Like this one, they're just kind of like, did you feel like you got like a raw deal? And then he's like, obviously, I'm not going to blame the legal system, but just his effortless charm. He was able to talk for 2 hours. And then he basically said starring in movies for him was easy. It came natural. And he said it's a big thing with USC. I think he said I forget what the title was, but he did something with George Lucas.
Oh, shit. I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, like George Lucas was either one of his professors or he went to college with him, something like that. Yeah, and then and then he was like starring in movies was like effortless. He said his life was pretty easy. And like obviously training for football is hard, but he said wasn't too challenged. So it's like he's a guy who's just very talented. Actor was the man. I mean, Kennedy's, Kardashians, Donald Trump, hanging out with Bill Clinton too. So it's like, if there's anyone who's in the Illuminati for football, it's definitely OJ Simpson. If you want to get conspiratorial, and then he's just talking about like, yeah, I was at this party, and Howard was there, Stern, and then I like hanging out with my family. I miss picnics. It's like, it's so wholesome. He's just like, yeah, I miss like when everyone would come to my place and we just have a picnic. It's like, yeah, that's pretty nice, OJ.
I think the next step for him is being on Joe Rogan. I feel like he's going to be on Joe Rogan in the next year. That's my prediction.